So I just saw Pokémon Detective Pikachu and it was awful. Or perhaps I should call it Pokemon instead, because that's what characters in the film kept calling them. It was either Pokemon or Pokemon, but never Pokémon. Pokemon sounds perfectly acceptable, but Pokemon? I'm sorry. Apparently this film was made by everyone's grandma. One of the more irritating aspects of this film was the character design. There was an artist that made a series of realistic Pokemon images way back when. They got pretty big on the internet and somebody took note and decided to hire him for the film. Unfortunately, the people that make these kinds of decisions in big budget Hollywood productions don't really understand why something becomes popular or successful. A lot of people shared these images because they looked creepy and weird, not because that's what they'd like to see in a live-action Pokémon adaptation. So throughout the film, you have all these ugly and disturbing Uncanny Valley characters. I mean, sure, they're not Sonic levels of bad, but they're still pretty bad. That shot where Mewtwo shows his teeth is just awkward and gross. Some of the designs are fine. Bulbasaur didn't look too bad, I guess. The Gengar they showed in this movie was absolutely atrocious. Unfortunately, the massive success of films like Disney's Beauty and the Beast remake has shown other studios that you want to aim for dark and gritty for your live-action remakes. The character design in that film was some of the worst shit I've ever seen, and unfortunately that seems to have been the takeaway for its success, when in reality it was more likely that name recognition and Emma Watson in the lead role had more to do with that than anything. But I guess there's no stopping that now, because every studio seems to think that what people really want is poorly lit bullshit with disgusting looking characters. If I was a child watching this movie, I'd probably be freaked out, but I guess that despite it technically being a kids movie, this is more geared towards adults who are susceptible to nostalgia bait. I mean, sure, it was pretty cool to look at a Pokemon appear on the screen and be like, I remember what that Pokemon is. But what I'd like you to consider is how you would feel about this film if you weren't already attached to this universe. Think about it. If this were the first instance of any Pokemon property, would anyone like this movie at all? Call me crazy, but it feels as though this likely would have been just as well received as any other one of this director's films. This is a movie that really does not have all that much to offer aside from brand recognition, and I am really not a big fan of those kinds of movies. None of the jokes were funny, and I only laughed at parts that weren't supposed to be. None of the shots were interesting or creative. The soundtrack ranged from cookie cutter to generational pandering. The EDM scenes in this film reminded me of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The acting in this film was next level atrocious. The male lead was already god-awful, but as soon as the female lead showed up, I was legitimately impressed. Holy crap, every line that came out of her mouth was embarrassing. Bill Nighy was alright, I guess. The only real acting that appeared in the film was Ryan Reynolds' voice performance. Still would have preferred Danny DeVito, but whatever, I guess. One of the bad guys that wore sunglasses looked and sounded exactly like Milo Yiannopoulos, so that was pretty funny. And finally, the script was just bad. The best I can say about the writing is that the film actually did have some sort of structure. It met the bare minimum requirement to being an actual movie, I guess. But of course, it's completely derivative and unoriginal. There are annoyances and conveniences littered throughout the entire story. Nothing makes any sense and things just happen because the script needs it to happen. It's just pretty fucking dumb. Yeah, I know, it's a kids movie, you're right. I also think it's a kids movie, but it's also very dumb. I am not a child. This is not a review channel for children. I am judging this movie as a movie, and I don't think it's a very good movie. The most prominent emotions I experienced during this film were annoyed and bored. Check this one out if you want, I guess, but I did not enjoy this at all. And I'm giving this one a 2 out of 10.